Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Shri V.S. Sundaresan, Executive Director, Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Join me in welcoming the speaker. We have Dr. Kailash Nath, Chief Technology Officer, Zerodha. We have Mr. Neeraj Singh, co-founder and CTO, Grow. And we have Mr. Suhas Tuljapurkar, founder director, Legasis Private Limited. A very good afternoon to you. Pleasure having you here with us. Thank you so much for gracing this occasion with your kind presence. Looking forward for the session. Over to you.
Good morning and good afternoon, because we are about 5 minutes after 12 noon. So, thank you for being here, and I welcome my panelists for this session on technology in compliance. All of you who are here will know that compliance is becoming more and more important in today's time. And being a regulator, whenever we find that there is a possibility of misconduct, the misconduct did not even take place, but when we perceive that there is a semblance of a misconduct likely to happen, we come with a new rule. And rule making has become the important job of the regulator, and we're making more rules and regulations and procedures. The compliance increases for the market participants. And the compliance becomes complex when these changes take place more often. So, from my experience in SEBI, I always say that compliance is in 3 buckets. Apparent compliance, just for the sake of doing something, to satisfy the regulator. Then, adequate compliance, it's slightly next step where when you tick the box, you know that you are just ticking the box and you are not actually doing it. That is adequate compliance. But as a regulator, we want the market participants to reach the level of absolute compliance. And that is where the compliance with the letter as well as spirit is reached. So if you want to reach that type of stage where the compliance level reaches absolute compliance, you need to use technology. It is no longer possible to ensure compliance with various requirements in the securities market in today's standards in a conventional way. So we need to adapt technology. Similarly, as a regulator, since we are only insisting on more and more compliance, if we want to supervise whether the standards of compliance is apparent or adequate or absolute, we also need to use technology. If we do manually, 2 things is possible. One is, we will catch the wrong person and make an enforcement action, and we miss out who has actually done the blunder. So from the regulator's perspective also, we need to adapt technology, and that is where the RegTech for the regulated entities and SupTech for the regulator comes into play. And in the overall financial system, the statistics shows that the amount spent on using technology tools for compliance is increasing by CAGR of more than 25%. And adoption of technology in compliance in India is as much as 87% as compared to the global standards of 64%. We must be proud in our system that we Indians are very good in adaptability, and that is why we are able to marry technology faster than any other country. Similarly, there are challenges when we travel in such a speed. Privacy issues come, data security comes, cyber security issues come. Despite these challenges, to give credit to the market participants because they have adopted technology so well, and two of my market participants whom we regulate sitting there, the way they have enabled penetration into the securities market and they have enabled the investors to adapt to the use of technology is something deserves absolute appreciation. So I will request all of you to please clap for them, because they are the ones who have actually brought the technology to the doorstep. According to me, the first startup in Indian securities market is National Stock Exchange. 30 years back, they married online trading. It was unheard of. So they are the first startup. They are the one first who started technology. They brought the technology to the office, and these people brought the technology to the washroom. People can trade sitting in that washroom. Forget about kitchen or forget about the hall. During COVID time, people were doing sitting in the hall. Today, people can do anywhere. So, technology has become the part of the game. And now, what are some of the salient tools which we have adopted as a regulated entities as well as the regulator? Our job is to facilitate adoption of technology by the market participants and as well as the investors. Now, during the journey, when we traveled this far, and we have a long way to do, I don't know where the destination is, because we think that the goalpost is here. By the time we just see the goalpost, already the goalpost gets shifted. That is the way the technology is moving fast. Therefore, I would like to request my panelists to just give their perception of adoption of the RegTech, SupTech in Indian market from their experience. With each one of them can speak for about 3 minutes, their views, and then we will have an exchange of thoughts. So let me first tell Mr. Kailash Nath. We all know that he is a very popular person who has come in TV and other places in YouTube because he is the CTO of Zeroga. Zeroga was one of the pioneers in bringing this trading through online across the investors. And we have another panelist by name Mr. Neeraj Singh. He is the co-founder and CTO. And we have Mr. Sugas Tuljapurkar. He is from Legacies. That is how you pronounce it? Legacies. So first I will give it to Mr. Kailash Nath for your views, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the very gracious introduction. People sitting and trading from washrooms, I don't know if it's a good trend or not. We'll figure out over the coming years. Talking about the use of technology in regulation and compliance and supervision, as a technologist, as an entity who is heavily regulated, as somebody who's interacted with the regulators over the last many years, I think the last several years, what SEBI in particular, which I can comment on, has done has been stellar. There have been all the technology-related systemic gaps that had existed because we came from very little technology adoption to massive explosion in adoption, especially in the retail segment. A lot of those niggling gaps and issues have been addressed. very rapidly over the last many years. And it's not to say that compliance is always easy. Sometimes there are extremely tight deadlines for technical implementations, but it's all been done in the right spirit. But more than introducing compliance measures, some of the more foundational work that SEBI has done in the recent years, my favorite as an engineer, as a technologist, is the introduction of standardized data formats and data structures for the whole industry. The project started 3.5 years ago, but it's hit the markets now over the last several months. I think these foundational building blocks, I think, shed light on the first principles view of data and the supervisory outlook based on technology. For instance, we have, let's say, 3 very large stock exchanges, and brokers and other participants in the market interact with these large exchanges, and every exchange, every market MII, market infrastructure institution, has their own data formats, protocols, and there are hundreds of different kinds of bits of data that you exchange with these institutions, and these were all separate, proprietary, non-standard. Now, when you have massive amounts of data flowing back and forth within the markets, and you have a mandate to enforce regulations or monitor or supervise, the first biggest stumbling block is that nothing is standard. You can't even build a technology system that can consume all this data. So that foundational work has taken many years, but it's one of those big strides that will now enable further, better building blocks to be built on this foundation of standardized data across. It's been a big win-win, not just for regulations and supervision, but the fact that now market participants don't have to work with hundreds of different formats, and it's all standardized. So compliance becomes easier. It doesn't have to be checkbox compliance. Developing and maintaining technological systems becomes easier. All the supervisory and regulatory reporting that happens, of which there is a lot in Indian markets, that becomes simpler, process-wise and technology-wise. So there have been many regulations that have been rolled out. The newest cybersecurity circular just came out last week. It's extremely comprehensive. The first version came out as early as 2018. I think Indian markets were the first to come out with a cybersecurity policy. And another one of my favorite examples, anecdote to cite, is SEBI mandates a strong cryptographic two-factor authentication for all users in the market, all retail users. And that, from our data at Zerodha, that one move of enforcement has cut down fraud complaints and complaints of accounts being hacked or compromised by more than 95% in our case. So there are many first principles, fundamental moves, not always specific technological implementations, but from a more first principles, foundational point of view that have been instituted in the last several years. I mean, the KYC norms, the PMLA norms, these are extremely comprehensive. It's not always easy to readily comply, but it's all in the right spirit. And I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kailash. Now I will request Mr. Suhas to give his opening.
Good noon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending on a very complex topic. Pre-lunch session, we know we are holding you between lunch and this session, we are there. Just to kind of overlay today, and I think I'm not going to focus merely based on, let's say, securities market or capital markets. I'm going to lay this very wide open. And that's where I would say that today businesses are becoming more and more complex. If you look at the complexity of doing business, global business, India's rank has become more complex, broadly, compared to what it was 4 years ago. And one of the major factors for that is the regulatory changes that are happening. One of the major factors for the business complexity, or it's not being very easy considered the global benchmarks. And you really have to look at it in that perspective to say that it's very complex world out there. The VUCA factor that the business today struggles with, makes it an imperative that you adopt technology, and therefore I think we'll have to move from any discussion around whether you need adoption of technology or not, I think it's an imperative and we got to adopt, everybody got to adopt that technology. And whatever is happening at the world level, there's a volatility, there is uncertainty, there is complexity, there is ambiguity. All of the VUCA factors today are actually bogging down business. It's not very easy in India to do business in any sector today. Having said that, having looked at what's happening with global compliance complexity, if I were to put it this way. You see, we are somewhere ranked around 32nd in a ranking of 78 jurisdictions. So obviously, we are somewhere there in the middle. We are not a very easy jurisdiction to do business. We're not very easy on the compliance. The third factor which is very important is that most of the compliances that we have today, and that's where I'm going to kind of beg to differ with Dr. Kailash on the data standardization part of it, because I think data standardization is where I think there is a uniformity of compliance, and I think more dominantly you look at rule-based compliance rather than principle-based compliance. India is a confused jurisdiction. You look at few of the laws, and they are principle-based compliances. You look at most of the laws which are archaic in nature, they are rule-based, and they'll tell you, they will encourage you to do the tick the box and not really look at letter and spirit of compliance. However, the things are changing with few of the new legislations that are coming up. Is going to be more towards principle-based approach. It's going to be more towards decriminalization of those minor offenses and things like that. So things are changing, but having said that, we still continue to be a very confused jurisdiction. And I've got a show cause notice from a regulator. My client has got a show cause notice from regulator, which talks about why does your policy doesn't read correct English. My policy actually is framed for 8th grade student to understand, therefore it is in a very, very simpler English. Also it gets translated into compliance purposes into, let's say, this is about sexual harassment policy. It gets translated into local vernacular languages and stuff like that. So obviously understanding the complexity of compliance in today's regime, look at it from the point of view of whether what the law enforcement agencies and statutory and regulatory authorities are trying to do, and notwithstanding, sir, due respect to SEBI as regulator, because on-the-spot regulation is one of the toughest kind of regulations that can happen. But the outlook does seem to be still to say that if you're not followed that micro-level compliance, okay, we are not going to ask you to explain. It's comply or perish regime that we follow. That's rule-based approach. The principle-based approach would be something different. But I think when it comes to rule-based approach, no two businesses are alike. Therefore, no two compliance program got to be alike. You got to look at customizing compliance programs. You got to look at customizing, although the RegTech actually helps you in standardizing few things. But when you move from data to information and information to knowledge, and that's where Dr. Kailash, I'm saying data, yes, important, but I think it's the knowledge application that's need to be deployed when we talk about RegTech. We are using at Legasis, I think we've had this experiment where we used drones to conduct an ongoing compliance audit, virtually on a real-time basis. We're trying to look at whether virtual reality can be used. We've got IoT where I think we are looking at completely humanless compliance reporting happening. However, the problem appears to be, is the corporate sector ready for that kind of transparency? Is the corporate sector ready to make sure that it's a humanless, errorless compliance regime that can happen? Because IoT has actually paved way, and I'm just taking 1 minute about it, is that, every factory that kind of pollutes air has to have ambient air quality monitoring system in place, and all of these are digital equipments like electrostatic precipitators, etc., etc. So what we do is we cull out the digital data from ESPs and actually do automated processing so that the monthly returns of ambient air quality go directly to the regulator. Now, regulator in this case is Pollution Control Board. Pollution Control Board does not have APIs opened. I can't report automatically into it. Thanks to SEBI, thanks to kind of market intermediary, at least XBRI APIs are opening up. Thanks to GSTN, I think we have automated reporting that can happen. So what is the digital data on ambience air quality is possible for every digital data, whether it resides in your ERP, SAP, or any other function. I think we are able to cull out that digital data, automatically process and file the returns. If the APIs and linkages are open, we can do it virtually, digitally, online. That, I would say, brings in what is known as Satiq principle in compliance, which is to say that it's simplified and transparent, integrated compliance. That's where the world is going to move. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. You have opened up very well, and wait for some questions from me. Good. Over to Mr. Neeraj.
Thank you, sir. So I think I can talk about our journey. For somebody who started from zero and reached to 100, what kind of compliance challenges we face. I think we can share some of those stories with you guys, and maybe anybody who's starting up like us, those might be very, very helpful. So we launched our stock market product in second half of 2020. And we were from tech background, and every problem, everything that we did, we solved using tech. So for us, whatever we wanted to do, write code for it, build some system for it was the way to go. We really did not differentiate or understood much about at that time about SupTech or RegTech, be it KYC, be it reporting requirements, be it related to AML or fraud. We just thought it's a problem, let's solve, how can we solve using tech. So in last 4 years, the journey has been intense for us. We not only made stock market accessible to millions of people, we also build a lot of RegTech around it. If you want to move that fast speed, I think safety measures and brakes are important, otherwise you can't drive faster. So this growth has not been only because we made products simple and accessible to the Indians, but also because on the hindsight, which is usually not visible outside, we built a lot of tech. We worked a lot with the regulators as well. And we did a lot of things in a very, very different manner. So we worked on the compliance accuracy, our data accuracy, our reporting accuracy, our ability to drive intelligence from that data. We built a lot of tech around KYC, around data hygiene, data warehousing, scanning of documents, processing of documents, identity, fraud detections, a lot of tech around those things. For us, when we started, one challenge was that what do we do now, build versus buy? There is a lot of players outside and a lot of products available. So what do you do? Should we build ourselves? Should we buy those things? Has been a big challenge. And when it comes to regulation, it's very hard to make choices, which player to go with, which product to use. And trust me, the only factor that plays out in the market is whatever rest of the people are using, just go and use that. It's very hard for the new player to enter into RegTech and SupTech market. But our challenges were very, very difficult. A lot of these products, the initial setup cost was very high. We were born in cloud. We have seen the pricing where you pay as you go. But these products were like you have to set up. There is a setup cost, and there is an infrastructure cost. There is a server cost. Tons of cost upfront you have to pay. You will see the goodness in a longer run, but you have to pay upfront. So one such thing which I think maybe we'll talk about it later, people can work on is pay as you go will make a lot of possibilities and innovation for the fresh entry, for the newer folks. Another thing was once you set up these products, and they were majorly around reporting or AML. There was not much beyond that. Once you set up these products, if there is any issue, tech issue or glitch, a very limited set of people, even in that org, knew how to handle, how to maintain, how to respond. Today, we have to report glitch if it extends more than 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, it is hard to even reach out to those people. So how do you solve that? So for us, there was not much of a choice. And third, and which is a major factor, was the scale. We have crores of customers, and to handle so much of data, and that too with so much of precision and accuracy, scaling these products was very, very difficult. Whatever is the maximum hardware possible, whatever is the maximum infrastructure possible, we deployed that. And beyond a certain number of customers, they do not scale. You cannot go, let's say, handle maybe 5 crore people data on these systems. So we had to build. We use them today, and a lot of them still we have to scale further. It's hard to put a number, but if I say, I think 10 to 15% of our total bandwidth goes into building and maintaining these systems, which is a lot. But I think without these systems, I think it's hard to grow faster. And I won't be exaggerating if I say for I think faster growth, for all of us to grow further in future, I think RegTech and SupTech is going to be the way. It will lay the path for all of us. Today, we are a QSB. I think I feel very proud. We are highly accurate in compliance, but still, if you ask me, am I satisfied? No, because there's lots of opportunity for us to do. Sir talked about IoT, which means real-time sharing of data. Today, a lot of data is still shared in a file-based system, file-based manner, whether it's the stock market or banking sector. All the data sharing is happening in file-based, which is not scalable beyond a point, and very risky as well, because it's a file and a lot of people have access to those systems as well. So I think real-time access of data would be the way to go about it, and I think in the rest of the session we will be talking more about it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Neeraj. Kailash, I just wanted to know, how does the current level of adoption in India as compared to the overseas, based on your experience, not only overall Fintech, although the statistic shows that we are 87% adoption as compared to the global average of 64%, but in compliance standards, both from the regulator as well as from the regulated entities, where do we stand when, between India as compared to other jurisdictions?
I think if we pick the last 5 years or slightly more, the rate of adoption and implementation of many of these systems have really accelerated in India. I can visualize a pre-2016 or 2015 period as being very different. But that coincides with internet penetration, the explosion of smartphones and whatnot. And the way Indian markets are structured, for instance, in US markets, you have dark pools. You can go settle trades wherever in a number of ways. In Indian markets, you can't. So the way our markets are structured in itself lends to a lot of cleanliness by default. Even without heavy-duty supervision systems, it's cleaner by default with the retail investor trader at the center. So I would say in the last 5+ years, the cleanliness, the hygiene of market activities, processes, reporting, and including technical standards have improved drastically. Now, that's also because of the principle versus rule-based thing. There are principles, but there are extremely strict rules. Like I said, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, there was this massive technical change that brokers were supposed to do, and I think the deadline was 10 days, which is practically impossible. But somehow it was pulled off. So those are very difficult. And the rule versus very specific technical implementation versus a protocol or spec, that debate is still unsettled. But thankfully, the regulator listens to market participants. Many of these regulations, especially technical ones, like the cybersecurity ones, and n number of other ones have been built in a very participatory manner. So that gives me hope as a regulated entity, because you're able to voice an objective opinion and be heard. And these are technical matters. You can present evidence. So there's room for consultation. It doesn't always work, but it works more than it doesn't. So the last few years have been great in terms of market hygiene, strength, and cleanliness compared to other markets, compared to other well-developed markets. But it's not easy. But I think we are in that phase, perhaps that zone where these systems, regulatory systems, compliance systems are catching up to the massive speed at which markets have grown. And it'll stabilize and settle down maybe in the next 5 years.
Thank you, sir. You said that tech has become the order of the day in every business. That's correct. And you also said that it's more rule-based, and though we are moving towards principle-based, and it's not fully principle-based as of now. You are absolutely right. And as a regulator, we are trying to move towards principle-based, but there are certain challenges, which I will cover in the next few minutes. The question to you is, since it is more of rule-driven, do the regulated entities pursue adoption of RegTech for compliance as an enabler? Do they think that if they adapt and adopt, it will increase their reputation?
Yeah, sir. So I think, let me answer the second point first, because that's very easy. While I think everybody, has this notion that I don't want to be headlines of the pink paper for wrong reason. Therefore, I want to protect my reputation, for sure. The question arises is, when you talk about business continuity versus reputation, what scores? And sir, my reading till now, and we're working across almost about 2,500 companies in India, I think what appeals more to the regulated entities is this issue about business discontinuity. If you tell them that your license is liable to be cancelled or your registration will be revoked and things like that, that your plant will be shut down or your business will be shut down, I think they are more concerned about that than the reputation, because notwithstanding anything else, I think the US kind of a DOJ taught us there is this defense called rogue employee. And it's taking place here in India. So you kind of find out who is responsible in your organization and hang her there, hang him there. You see, therefore, reputation-wise, people are also realizing that you'll probably be headlines of the pink paper for wrong reason for a couple of days, but the memory is short. So there are 2 or 3 things happening here, sir. Once, if you look at the habitual nature, there is no way in the law in India today which talks about habitual non-compliance being punished to the extreme extent. Okay, so there is in somebody's mind a trade-off if it is only reputational damage. That trade-off is happening. So coming back to your first part of your question, sir, my experience so far has been, and we've been into compliance space or compliance IT-enabled solution space since 2009-10, working across almost about 2,500 companies. The adoption has been pretty slow. Secondly, I think people don't value compliances yet in India. Sir, very recently we have seen the cost of non-compliance versus cost of compliance equation being heavily in favor of incurring some cost of compliance and making sure that you are compliant. Most of the other legislations, and I think there has been these regulators like SEBI, for example, are ensuring that cost of non-compliance and cost of compliance equation is right in favor of complying rather than non-complying. So, sir, my view is it's a very, very slow adoption of technology. They believe that it's a facilitator for sure, but they're not willing to pay adequate price. They're not recognizing the value of that technology. that it will actually not only save you money, it will enhance your reputation, it will give you business continuity, and overall, your risk factors are coming down. And I think RegTech, eventual objective there would be that your risk factors need to be controlled and brought down. So to that effect, sir, my reading till today has been, it's not as much as it ought to be. And technology is a facilitator, there is no doubt about it, but it's not being valued the way it ought to be valued. Thank you, sir.
Neeraj, you said that you are the new entrant and you were fascinated to adopt technology and then, grew quite faster. What are the three key drivers behind such type of adoption of RegTech in your standards? Can you name or the three, four important drivers which actually fascinated you to move so fast?
So one thing was, which is very natural, that humanly it is impossible. The amount of data that we handle, the number of customers registering with us every month, and out there, there are people who are expert in committing frauds, a lot of identity theft, a lot of, password theft, which is happening around. For us, there was no other option. And I think there's no other option to anyone else as well. Another thing is the technology landscape has changed a lot in the last couple of years. If you see, a lot more people are now using API-based approach. When we started, all the cloud providers were outside India. None of them were here. Now we have data centers of these cloud providers in Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, everywhere. Still, the vendors who were not in this cloud used to take all our data outside country. So now all of those vendors which we work with, whether international or Indian, they have moved to India. So a lot of our data related to analytics or data warehousing, everything is now localized. And I'm sure this is true for everyone else. So the technology landscape has changed a lot in these many years. And now look at the advancement on the AI ML side as well. With the generative AI, it has become a lot more easier. I think we, in initial days, developed a lot of models for the facial recognition, for the liveliness, for all the KYC-related journey to make it more seamless for the user. Now there are a lot more providers out there. People can buy those products, adopt those technologies. So I think technology landscape has changed a lot. And third role, which I would say has played the largest part, the collaboration between the regulators and the participant increased a lot. There are a lot more events like this. There are a lot more meetings. There are hackathons happening around it. I think that collaboration has opened up the door. People knowledge about the compliance, what needs to be done, if there is any gray area, they go meet the regulators, they ask the questions. I think those platforms have opened up the space, and that's why I think adoption for us, at least, it was very, very easy. And whenever new compliance come, at least in Grow, we feel very happy that something new has come, and we get to build again. And trust me, RegTech and SupTech is also your competitive advantage if you take them in a right spirit.
Thank you, Neeraj. Kailash, Mr. Sugas makes a statement that the adoption is slow in India. Is it because people perceive that the cost is very high as compared to the benefits they will get out of using RegTech for compliance, or is there any other reason from your point of view?
I think there's no one answer to this. In capital markets, adoption is high because there's no other way. You have to adopt, and there are very tight deadlines. So capital markets has probably the highest rate of adoption. But elsewhere, it's a combination of many factors, primarily a lack of understanding of technology. And we really have to look at the last decade, where everything has become last decade plus slightly more, where everything has become highly digital and highly interconnected over the internet. So many organizations elsewhere, which are outside of capital markets, they don't really, in in their managements, there's no clear first principles understanding of technology. It is still seen as a cost center. That 2000s view of tech being a cost center, assigning a percentage to it where it does its job to ease, that all of those things have changed. And, it's really changed under people's noses, but that realization hasn't kicked in because there are many non-technical people still in charge of taking these key decisions. But it's inevitable that in the coming years that will change because it'll be do or perish. And we can already see that compliance as a checkbox thing or tech as a cost center thing, these are changing. And wherever they're not changing naturally, the regulators are really putting their foot down.
Thank you, Kailash. So, Sugas, I am coming back to the same point that you said that the adoption is slow. Now, if we as a regulator force the regulated entities to adopt faster by making rules, then the other comment will be that regulator does not understand the difficulties in implementation and regulator is simply forcing it because regulator is sitting in the AC room and the regulator does not know what happens in the marketplace. So, how do as a regulator, you tell me that we balance forcing the people to adopt faster if they are slow? I mean, your statement was they are slow. So, if we want to force them to do faster, what type of 2 or 3 things which you will expect the regulator to do?
Sure, sir. See, the first principle, again, going back to, Dr. Kailash's favorite phrase, first principle, is that the moment you look at compliance as something which is driven by law, regulation, statutory provision, I think there is an aversion in the mind. Sir, that is a problem in Indian context. When you look at nature, for example, nature follows laws. Okay? Being non-compliant with nature is irregular and non-compliant. So, following norms is normal, and therefore, you have to look at compliance not because somebody is telling you to comply with. Compliance has to come by way of choice. And if you choose that, and the overwhelming reason why you need to do that, because it kind of sets the boundaries within which you have to go, it allows you to accelerate far better and greater because the boundary lines are set, because you're never going to drive a car without braking system. You need that braking system, and that's what compliance and governance does. So from that perspective, so long as the perception in the corporate sector is that just because it is a law and I need to follow it, so regulators will continue to kind of push across. There is a very, very nice Nigerian model, sir. Although I don't know if that's the proper jurisdiction to pick up, but they actually give positive points in tendering if the benchmark governance score of a listed entity in Nigeria is higher. So there is an incentivization for somebody to be 100% compliant and to be governed correctly. Now, that probably rewards on the positive side will pave way for setting culture of compliance rather than merely tick the box, and therefore regulator coming out with regulations after regulations, which is fine, it is required, because many a times it's the reactive nature of the regulation that happens across the world. However, what does one do to encourage that culture of compliance? It's something, sir, which I think all of us, everybody in the ecosystem has to really look at it, because then the knowledge application and the acceptability of the RegTech through knowledge application will be much higher. Thank you, sir.
Neeraj, from your experience, do the regulated entities and the regulators collaborate better, or can there be much better ways of collaborating so that we achieve this, enhance this RegTech and SupTech in our compliance? What is your take on that?
I think it might vary company to company, but for us, I think we did a lot of collaboration. But then there are a lot of other participants in the capital market, and I feel like the size of each and every company and the number of customers they have varies. And as Sir said, that no two businesses are same. Sometimes the time given to the industry, for somebody it might be easier to achieve those timelines because they can build or adopt those tech pieces faster. For someone it might be very, very hard. So maybe that is one space where we can do better. I don't see any deficiency in terms of collaboration. Collaboration is, I think, superb, and people listen. Both side people are listening. And I think these technology, the tech pieces that we are talking about, enables both supervisors as well as the supervised entities. So it is something, I think, which is of common interest. So the kind of collaboration, if I say, for example, Llama, if I talk about, again, a very good example of real-time data sharing. All our systems, I don't know if all the people know here, but all our systems are being monitored, where we send our real-time data about the liveliness, about the runtime of our systems with the regulators on real time. Now, there's a lot more that we can do around KYC data, around transactional data, not just about the tech systems, which I think primarily around monitoring the glitches, but it could be around any other pieces. So I think there's another collaboration piece which I think we can think about and work on is how can we bring those systems also under such pipeline. And now, if it doesn't exist, then there's a lot more effort manually goes in pushing this data to provide this data in the file formats and everything. If they are there, I think the systems will keep doing their job. And we will get notified only when there is some anomaly in the system. Otherwise, we can just focus on our real business. So it does save time in a longer run. It has a cost initially. But if you look at the long-term advantage, it does save a lot of our time and helps you scale faster.
Thank you very much. I think organizers are using the technology very well to ensure compliance with the time also. It's already showing that it is the time up. So I just want to thank all of you and conclude by making two statements that the regulator as well as the regulated entities have to work together and definitely harness the potential of technology to ensure compliance in the interest of fulfilling the three important mandates of the regulator, namely investor protection, development of the market, and regulation of the market. Now, if we don't do, you all will be looking for some bites, which I want to tell in one word. At the beginning, I said, as a regulator, we look for A3 in compliance: apparent compliance, adequate compliance, and absolute compliance. But if we don't adopt technology for compliance, instead of reaching the level of absolute compliance, we will reach the stage of absurd compliance. Being a regulator for close to 36 years, I don't want our journey should move towards that. From adequate compliance, we should move towards absolute compliance by adopting technology rather than not adopting it, changing our track to absurd compliance. I don't want that to happen. And thank you very much for your patient listening. Over to the organizers.